Okay, so first things first. We have our intro paragraph. Okay. Our intro paragraph starts with contextualization. Contextualization is explaining what is happening in America during the time of the essay. So if your essay is talking about the policy towards enslavement in America in 1780s, 1790s, you would talk about maybe the conflict between the different factions, the federalists, something in general about what is happening in America. And that's about 2 or 3 sentences. Okay, you're good. Two or 3 sentences. Then you end it with a thesis statement. The thesis statement must answer the question. If you ignored everything else about your essay, but just read the thesis statement, it should answer the question. Okay? So it must answer the question. And then you get to decide what your rest of your essay looks like. Okay? Most students will write 2 or 3 body paragraphs. There's very, very few times where you're going to do something that's not a 2 or 3 body paragraph essay. So let's go body number 1, body number 2, and body number 3. Okay. So you should always start any body paragraph with your claim of that paragraph, right? Think of the CER. So you have your claim, your intro sentence. This tells the reader exactly what's going to be in that body paragraph. That intro sentence should align with your thesis statement, right? We gave the example in class about how policies could lead to resistance or policies could lead to Republican values. So your paragraph should be an example of that. So we have these policies lead to resistance. And so your intro sentence would say that. Something like, before the Revolutionary War, many different British policies would lead to colonial resistance. Something super broad like that. You're not putting in evidence quite yet. You're just setting the setting for that paragraph. And then you get into your evidence. Okay, evidence number 1, where you describe it. If I describe it, I mean like you're defining it. What is it? If it's Declaration of Independence, what is the Declaration of Independence? Okay, that's the describe. And then you explain it. But what I mean by explain is how is it connected to your thesis statement? Or how it answers the question. So in our example of the policies that lead to resistance, if your policy is the, I don't know, the coercive acts, you would say, what are the coercive acts? Then you would say how they responded to it. Oh, then they're going to start gathering weapons and then they're going to try to resist against the British. Right? That shows resistance. You're explaining how it's a connection to your thesis statement. And then I just do that again. Evidence number 2, I describe and I explain. Same thing. So you could do this and, maybe 2 or 3 sentences for each piece of evidence. Probably lean towards 3 sentences. And because I'm doing 3 body paragraphs, that means I only need 2 pieces of evidence for this for this body paragraph. I finish the concluding sentence? Something like, all of this shows that different policies led to resistance, something like that. Now, one thing we talked about was that we need to develop a complex understanding, or we need to show a complex understanding of the topic. The easiest way to earn that is, does anyone remember what the easiest way to earn that is? I think what the easiest way is. A counter argument, okay? So you can put your counter argument anywhere. So if we gave the example of British policies that lead to resistance, an example of a group of people who did not resist would be who? The Loyalists. So I could decide to put the Loyalists in any one of these body paragraphs. I'm going to try to fit it best with one of the policies, or maybe there's a body paragraph where you're like, okay, I can come up with a lot of evidence for this one, but not very many for this. Maybe that's where I can put my counter arguments. So I do the same thing. I do intro sentence. Maybe I have evidence number 3. I've described it, I've explained it. But then I'm going to throw in my counter evidence. I have to describe and explain that too. If you just mention in passing Loyalists, they're not going to give you a point for that. You have to treat it like another piece of evidence. I said in class you should go for 6 pieces of evidence. Your counter argument counts as one of those 6. Okay. And then I end it with a concluding sentence again. It makes sense so far? And then for third body paragraph, I do the same thing. Intro, evidence number 5, describe, explain, number 6, describe, explain, concluding sentence. Here's one way your essay could look. I think setting your essay up like this could put you in a really good position. Here's a different way you could do it. We gave the example before in activity number 7 or whatever it was. The question's asking about how policies led to resistance and how policies led to Republican values. You could write that in 2 body paragraphs. One all about policies leading to resistance, and one about policies leading to Republican values. One way you can show a complex understanding is breaking apart your arguments. And we did that in the activity itself, where I said, oh, you could have one showing economic policies leading to resistance and political policies leading to resistance. By showing that there's different types of policies, you're showing a complex understanding. If you did that, you wouldn't have to do a counter argument. Does that make sense? Sometimes the essay will ask you, what are political, social, economic policies? If they ask you to do it, then that's not complex understanding. You're just answering the question. But if they don't do that and you just go and split up and categorize things on your own, that can show complex understanding. For that example that we did in activity 7, it would be splitting up the paragraphs, having something like political evidence and economic evidence. That could show complex understanding to get those extra 2. Okay. Questions about this? This is helpful. Glad we talked about this. Yeah. Okay. Any questions about this before we move on? Sweet. Okay. We only have about 5 minutes left, 5-6 minutes. Why don't we take this time to, if you haven't gotten it out yet, get out your study guide. Is there anything that's on your study guide you're like, Mr. Barth, can we go over this? Did we talk about this? There's some things that are in there. It's just like, it's not going to be in the test. I couldn't see you using it as evidence, so don't worry about it. Or there's some things that are like, I know are confusing, I know are complex, that might be helpful for us to talk about together. Yes. I kind of went through Republican motherhood pretty quickly because we're going to talk about it more in our next unit. But just a quick like definition of it is that mothers should teach civic values or like democratic values to their family. It's kind of this societal pressure put on women to teach their children about democracy, about being a citizen, which is ironic in a few things, right? A few ways. Women do not have political power at this time, but yet they're supposed to teach their children about political power, right? They're denying political power to this group of people, but then expecting them to teach their children. And there's also different things like women are supposed to teach their husbands because their husbands are immoral and women are pure creatures who are supposed to like teach their husbands to do what's right as well, which is also weird that they're doing that and not giving them political power. So you're like, oh, women are so much more pure and better than men because men are evil on the inside, but let's give all the men the power. It's just, yeah, there's some weird things going on. Okay, other questions from your study guide? No lies reported yet. Any other questions from your study guide? First party system, that's just this debate between the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans. Okay, because once we have a constitution and they become more organized, then they do become political parties. That's really all it is. Other things from the study guide. Anything else? Oh, yeah, Dunmore. Dunmore's proclamation was when they offered freedom for enslaved Africans if they joined the British. And we talked about how about 30,000 enslaved Africans would take this opportunity and would gain their freedom through this. The effect of this is that it would turn white Southern loyalists to join the patriot cause, the independence movement, because they don't want to lose enslaved people. So this is a way so they can maintain power. They're going to join up with the patriots and turn away from the British, who they once supported. This is not true for everybody. This is a generalization. Yeah, I don't know why it says Dunmore's War on there. It should be Dunmore's Proclamation. I think that's what it says in your textbook. Same thing, yeah. That's not gonna make sense. Anything else from the study guide? Those are the laws that the question was Virginia and Kentucky resolutions. That's when these states said they will ignore laws they say are unconstitutional. So they say a law is unconstitutional, they're going to ignore it. What were the laws they were referring to? Alien and Sedition Acts. Remember, these are Federalist laws designed to target Democratic Republicans and their allies. So, like, French immigrants could be deported at any time. If Democratic Republican journalists write something bad about the president in the newspaper, they can be thrown in jail. And so the Democratic Republicans in these states want to ignore these laws because it's unconstitutional. Now, is there anything in the Constitution that says they can do that? No, but they want to do it. Anything else? Why was Mr. Barth playing Midnight by Taylor Swift? Midnight Judges. Who are Midnight Judges? This is going to be, if you're 3B, we haven't talked about this yet. Federalist appointed judges. Unlike the president, national court judges are in office for the rest of their life or until they retire. And so while the Federalists will lose power, the Federalist judges will stay along for a lot longer. And they're going to push for a lot more like national power decisions through the Supreme Court. You like it better up there? After what? Oh, like this? Yeah. You want this up here? Yeah. We'll change it for Abby, okay, everyone? Okay. Anything else, everybody, before we end today? Okay. We'll finish up for today.